the jobs numbers that came out today were pretty big, and that's almost an understatement. The expectations were 140,000 jobs, and in fact, 254,000 jobs were created in September. And we should also say that included upward revisions to the past 2 months. 55,000 added in July, 17,000 added in August, which brought those job gains to 144,000, 159,000 respectively. There are a lot of people who are saying, had the Fed been aware somehow, I don't know how you would do that, that 254,000 jobs were going to be created in September, they probably wouldn't have cut rates by 50 basis points. So it's that good of a jobs report. And look, obviously there are structural problems with our economy, but during a recession, those structural problems remain the same, but everybody gets, hurt more, particularly those people who are sort of losing out on stuff. So the idea that we may not be headed into a recession is a good thing.
And a good thing for the election, too, because we're seeing some numbers that Harris has erased Trump's lead on inflation and has been narrowing the lead in terms of how people view who would be better for the economy, which is unheard of in my lifetime for a Democrat.
We shall see. We'll be talking, obviously, Ryan Grimm, more about this election. There's some stuff that I'm not too happy about, but we can save that. But it's not all for my personal happiness. But nevertheless, someone could check in with me occasionally. In the meantime, Donald Trump is on he's in Saginaw, Michigan, pushing his no taxes on tips proposal, which, to be clear, just so everyone knows this, the range of workers and what he considers tips extends to people who live in multi-million-dollar apartments in New York City that they've paid through their hedge funding. What constitutes tips in Donald Trump's world is very, very broad. And it's not really focused on people that you and I consider who get tips. But here is a moment where, and this is a fascinating moment as far as I'm concerned, because one, it reveals to a bunch of theoretically working class people who have come to visit Donald Trump, that Donald Trump, if he literally could defecate on these people, he would. He would. But I also have an interesting theory, too, is how it's received by them. Let's get out of the potty talk. But here is Donald Trump admitting what I think, people who've followed his career in New York are completely aware of.
You know what's going to happen? You're going to end up doing a lot more business, I think. I think you're going to actually end up, so remember, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime. And with overtime, too, I think that could be a profit-making deal, too, because I think you're going to have a lot more overtime if you do that. Because of that, you're going to end up with a lot more overtime. I used to hate to pay overtime.
Pause it for one second. I was in the private... there's absolutely... I guess his argument is that you will get overtime because your employer will not hesitate to give you overtime because they won't have, and I don't know if the taxes that are suspended are on income taxes or if they're on payroll taxes. I suspect it's only income taxes. If it's on payroll taxes, understand that's a horrible situation.
Yes.
You begin to cut into Social Security. It is really a mechanism to cut Social Security. I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's only on income taxes, in which case there is no incentive whatsoever from your employer to give you overtime. The fact that you're not getting taxed on it doesn't encourage them. If it is that he's undercutting payroll taxes on this, it's highly problematic for Social Security. But let's go back a little bit.
Could be a profit-making deal, too, because I think you're going to have a lot more overtime if you do that. Because of that, you're going to end up with a lot more overtime. I used to hate to pay overtime. When I was in the private sectors, they say, oh, I don't want overtime. You know, I shouldn't tell you this. I'd go out and get other people and let them work regular time. It's terrible. I'd say, no, get me 10 other guys. I don't want to have time and a half. I don't want to have. But it'll be great. I mean, it'll be, those three things are great. But our seniors really deserve it because they've been decimated. And the seniors, please vote for Donald Trump, okay? Because they're not doing it for you. They're not doing it for you. Get out and vote and get all you.
So Donald Trump, concedes that like at every turn that I could as an employer, I would try and rip off workers. Now, to be fair to Trump, he also would rip off contractors.
Yep.
And so it wasn't just the workers he would rip off. He would rip off everybody. And he certainly knew how to rip off workers. Now, as I'm looking, it does exempt overtime from income tax and both sides of the payroll tax. So it would be really devastating to people's Social Security down the road. There's a certain amount of money that they will be making, and in which case it may even encourage employers to give people overtime because
to avoid
they don't have to pay the taxes with other people's Social Security. But again, it's all this money is going into essentially, you can look at it as social insurance, as the risk pool, and the least amount of, premiums, if you want to look at it that way, go into Social Security. That means less payout at the end. So it's a bad idea from a public policy and a retirement perspective. But my theory about him admitting to people that he used to screw over his workers is that, it all gets back to that interview we did years ago from a professor who had done something on Joseph Mesmer and mesmerism. Mesmer was like a snake oil salesman. And one of the things that she said that people liked about Trump is that they know he's lying, but that they feel he's lying on their behalf.
For them. Yes.
And when he goes and admits, like, look, I would screw over people like you before, but now I won't, just because we're on a different team. It basically enhances, I think, their trust in him.
I think, yeah. I mean, we're in this era where politics, unfortunately for some people, I think has become so... The effects of our government there's such a distance in how people perceive what government is doing for them versus whether or not they're, I don't know, in terms of Trump supporters, they're triggering the libs. Like, there's no association in between what government does for you and your lives and who you're voting for, because it's more about Trump pissing off the people that piss you off than it is about him delivering for you in any real material way. And that's, I think, the problem in terms of what the Democrats haven't been able to communicate for so many years, their vision versus his. Now, I don't know. I mean, he's also kind of just leading a cult there. Yep. But he's rich guy to worship. He's prosperity gospel incarnate. So when he talks about ripping off workers, the people that support him and bow down to the strongman, they think in the back of their minds it's nonsensical, but they think, well, they probably deserved it, because a big hallmark of conservatism is like, you don't really empathize with other people until it happens to you. And there's something about Trump's charisma and the way he approaches things that makes them think, well, it's not going to be against me.
I mean, I think it's also there's this dynamic of like, when the Celtics used to play Bill Laimbeer, I'm dating myself on the Detroit Pistons. Probably nobody knows who I'm talking about. But the basketball in the 80s, was very much about, you're going to post up on the opposite team. Maybe you kick it out, but very rarely. It's really just about posting up on the opposite team. And so every team would have one guy whose job it was to throw some elbows and literally inflict pain on people who are posting up. Detroit had this guy, Bill Laimbeer, and he was the type of player where, like, you'd say, he's an a-hole unless he's on your team.
Right. And
then all of a sudden, exactly everything he's doing is perfectly fine because he's doing it on your behalf. And I think when Trump comes out there and says, like, I screwed over workers all the time, now that he's telling them, they think like, oh, that indicates he's going to screw over other people on our behalf. And
but I'll say, in terms of how it appeals to people outside of his base, there's diminishing returns in this regard because he's already been president.
But he's, the bottom line is the dude's stuck at 47, 48. It's really just a question in every race whether Harris can pick up 48 or 49%. I mean, that's really, at the end of the day, that's the question. He's not going anywhere. He's not dropping. He's not going down. And how many people come out to vote is obviously going to be the issue. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.